back to this channel. This is React 30-day challenge, and today we will going to do render and commit. Okay, before your component are displayed on screen, they must be rendered by React. Okay, so whatever you see on the screen is actually needs to be rendered by React. Understanding the steps in this process will help you to think about how the code executes and explain the behavior. So I don't know about you, but for me it happens a lot. Like like in initial stages I used to think why this is being shown before that, why that is being shown before that. So let's see whether this reading this part of documentation helps. So what we will going to learn, what rendering means in React, okay, when and why React renders as a component, the steps involved in displaying component on a screen, why rendering does not always produce DOM update. Okay, so you must have also heard or read like what is the best qualities of React, and they move one of the best qualities they always mention is virtual DOM. So basically they say React does not update the actual DOM but first the virtual DOM, and only small changes and then it will compare to DOM and virtual DOM, and whatever the changes you can find, that changes will only be updated instead of updating the whole DOM. Okay, and it is very logical as well if you think about it. Like React is developed by Facebook, or now known as Meta. So they must have developed it for their application Facebook. And if you see or have used Facebook application, you could see like the major components of Facebook as a developer. You can think that number of users are interacting with your application, causing it to change or events which will change the UI. So what this will do, they need to constantly updating UI based on other users action as well. That's why if they update the DOM again and again and again in for a simple like or share or comment, then it would become very difficult to maintain the application and to have this smooth experience we have for Facebook. That's why they have developed something called virtual DOM, and only the changes between virtual DOM and the DOM is being changed in the actual DOM. Okay, imagine that your component are cooks in the kitchen. Okay, so our components are cook assembling tasty dishes from ingredients. So basically whatever the elements we give acts as a ingredient for our dish. In this scenario, React is the waiter who puts the request from the customer and bring them in their order. So basically what they're saying, components can create certain recipes, like they can took certain elements, add styling, add JavaScript and create certain functionality. What functionality is required is basically React will tell you. So it will go to user and user will say, oh, I want, when I click on this, I want this to happen. React will go to your component, give this information to your component, and the component will create that functionality. The process of requesting and serving UI has 3 steps. Okay, triggering our render. So first you need to call that render. That render will not be automatically shown on the screen, so there should be a specific time where you have to call it. Then you need to render the component, preparing the order in the kitchen. So they have taken the analogy like preparing the order in the kitchen, committing to the DOM, placing the order on the table. So basically they are telling like first you place an order, then the waiter will give your order to your kitchen will prepare the order, and then that order is being placed. So preparing the order will be done by component, taking the order and providing that order to the customer is done by React, and triggering the order or giving the order is done by the user. So we have three steps in rendering process. Requesting and serving UI. First is trigger render, then you render, and then commit to the DOM. So this is very important. I'm gonna copy this and add it to our notes. Okay, three here, and it's what we have doing is rendering and commit. Okay, add this to our notes. Now this is illustration which they have given. So basically what they have given, trigger is being, React taking the order from the user. Component kitchen, card and button are there, and they prepared certain different type of card. And commit, we are sending this order to the customer. Step 1, trigger a render. There are two reasons for a component to render. It's a component initial render, or the components or one of the ancestors state has been updated. So the first step is to trigger a render, and when that trigger will happen, first will be the initial trigger, like just placing your component on the screen. Then the second trigger will be when there is a change in state, whether in the component itself or the parent component, which is or the parent component. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether that you are using that state or not, but since you depend on your parent, so if there is a state change in a parent, the parent will re-render, then you will, the main component will render again. So this is also very important. I'm gonna add this to our notes. So trigger, there are two reasons for a component to render, called initial render, when the state has been updated. Now let's see what's an initial render is. Initial render is when your app starts and you need to trigger the initial render. So whenever the starting of your application, whenever you place your component on the screen, the framework and sandbox sometimes hide this code, but is done by calling create root with the target DOM node, then calling it its render method with your component. Okay, so most of the time what happens is that initial render method is not being shown because we call something called create root. So what create root does, it has a render method inside it, and we call it, like here they have given example. So they have imported create root from React DOM client, which will be installed whenever we create our or install our React library. Now this create root method, basically we are accessing this tag with id root, okay, and then we are rendering this image. I'm pretty sure if we remove this root dot render, it will not be shown. So yes, they have mentioned it. Try commenting out root dot render and call and see the component disappears. Let's do that then. Voila, it's gone. So the initial rendering is not being done. So framework sandbox sometimes hide this code, but it's done by calling create root target. So it can be done, because since the framework already takes care of this, so it can be, can be done by calling. Awesome. Re-render when the states update. Okay, let's check this one, because root rendering, we know we don't have to worry much about it. because frameworks handle it. It's the state update which makes your mindset off, and you think, what the hell is happening? Or why the hell this is being shown? So once the component has been initially rendered, you can trigger further render by updating its state with set function. Okay. Updating, so what is a set function? Well, this set function is your use state hook set function they're talking about when you want to update your state. Updating a component state automatically queues a render. You can imagine these as a restaurant guest. Okay, so basically they are saying like whenever you set a state or whenever you call this function, React will automatically think, okay, I need to re-render the screen. You can imagine these are as a restaurant guest ordering tea, dessert, all sort of things after putting in their first order, depending on the state of their thirst or hunger. So basically, what it's trying to say, like you go to a restaurant, you order something. Like suppose I go to my favorite restaurant. What is my favorite restaurant? So I'm Indian, so I love not I love Indian food, like I eat Indian food normally. I love South Indian food. So I'm a North Indian. I love South Indian food. So I go to the restaurant and I order idli and sambar. But and that is my first order, but that is not enough for me because I'm hungry more. So I'm gonna ask the waiter again. Can I order more, like dosa as well? And one, I think, paisam will be very good as a sweet dish. Oh my god, now I'm getting hungry. So focus. So basically what I'm trying to say here is like you can reorder again and again, and reorder means rendering, and set function will re-render your UI. This is again a great illustration by Rachel Lee Nebor. The customer says, oh, this is not type of card I want something different. React, take this order, go to component kitchen will create one. So re-render when states update. So once the initial has been updated, it is the set function bit re-renders. This is also a very important point. Step 2, React renders your component. After you trigger a render, React calls your component to figure out what to display on the rendering is calling your component. Okay, trigger a render is basically giving an order. Now React will decide or calls your component to tell what you want to show them, what actually the customer wants. So rendering is React calling your component. This is also important. What is rendering? Basically React calling your component. On initial render, React will call the root component. Okay, for subsequent render, React will call the function component whose state update triggered the render. So initial render is the root component being called, whereas for subsequent render, whatever the component actually makes that call, that will be called. So it will not call your root component. So suppose I have a structure like this. I have two components and the first component has a child and the child makes the state updates. So that child component will be re-render, not the first or second component. This is also pretty important. I think rendering everything is important because see why this is important. Nobody talks about all this stuff. No one. If you study any tutorial or anywhere, they do not talk about exactly how rendering works. They just give you an example how to do stuff, but what exactly happens, nobody tells. This post process is recursive, so if updated component returns some other component, the React will render that component next, and if that component also returns something. So basically what they're saying, if there is a change in a parent component and the parent component will re-render, So all the child component inside that parent component will be re-rendered, and even the grandchild's inside the child component will be re-rendered again. In the following example, React will call gallery in image several times. So this is the gallery section inspiring. We have image. These three image are three different components because they have three different states. This is the image. Okay. Pitfall. No, before that, let's read what they're trying to say. During the initial render, React will create a DOM node for section, h1, and 3 image tag. So initially what happened, React will create a DOM with a section. Inside the section there will be a h1 tag, then will be a image tag. Okay. Then during re-render, React will calculate which of these property, if any, has changed since the previous render, and if it won't do anything with that information until the next step commit phase. Okay, so in re-render, what will it do? It will just match up whether we have a section tag, whether we have a h1 tag. If we have a h1 tag, whether the content inside h1 tag is same. We have an image tag, whether the content inside the image tag is same goes. It will check. It will not do anything. It will just check and create a record. Oh, if there is a change, what is the change? Pitfall. Rendering must always be a pure calculation. Same output, same input. So we have learned in this, like, you should never make your return statement of component an impure function or impure. When I say impure, you should not, take some state, your change in this section or this return part should not update any other state or component state and stuff. So you need to make it pure. If you want to have more clarity, there is a video about it I have talked in describing UI. You can check out that video as well. It minds its own business. It should not change any object variable that existed before rendering. One order should not change the anybody else order. So basically it's saying, so first thing, same input, same output. So basically what they're trying to say, if somebody order a salad with tomato, they should get a salad with tomatoes, not with onions. Okay. And second thing, it should mind its own business. That is, if somebody is ordering their food, they should, their order should depend on them, like the food, whatever they are getting, whatever they are ordering, they should get. It should not affect somebody else's order. Otherwise, you can encounter confusing bugs and unpredictable behavior as your code base grows in complexity. When developing in strict mode, React call each component function twice, which helps to resurface you can encounter confusing bugs and unpredictable behavior as your code base grow in complexity. So as this is what I was talking about in earlier video, like, if there are many times you don't understand what exactly is happening, why this is being shown, that is because your return statement is not pure. You are not minding your own business and you are not getting same input, same output condition. For that, to avoid that, use strict mode. So strict mode helps you to make sure that you make your component more strict. Let's deep dive optimizing performance. Okay. The default behavior of rendering all components nested within the updated component is not optimal for performance. So this is true. So what exactly it's saying, like, suppose if I have a parent component which has 100 child component, then one change in a small change in parent component will re-render the 100 child component, which is not good performance wise. If you run into performance issue, there are several option ways to solve it described in performance section. Don't optimize prematurely. So basically what they mean is, you should not write your code keeping optimization as your main goal. You write your code, you create your functionality, and when you are done with your code and functionality and you are satisfied that this is working, then you should move forward with performance section. Okay, then you should make it more good performance wise, make optimum performance. Okay, that is a step 3. We're done with the step 2. We trigger a render, we have a rendering process. Now we will going to commit changes to the DOM. After rendering or calling your component, the React will modify the DOM. Okay, for initial render, the React will use append child DOM API to put all the DOM nodes it has created on the screen. For re-render, it will apply the minimal necessary operation calculated by rendering to make DOM match the latest rendering output. So for initial render, they will use method called append child and add all the DOM nodes on the screen. Whereas for re-render, they will just whatever the in re-render they have documented the changes, that will be only added to the DOM. So this is good. Okay. This is React only changes the DOM nodes if there is a difference between render. So yeah, if React does not find any changes in the virtual DOM, it will not make any change in the actual DOM. For example, if here is a component that re-renders with different props passed from its parents every second, notice how you can add some text in input updating the value, but the text does not disappear when the component re-render. Okay, let's see. For example, here is a component that re-renders with different props passed from parent every second. So basically parent is sending updated props every second. Notice how you can add some text into the input value, updating its value, but the text does not disappear when the component re-render. So basically what string is saying, we are getting different props every second to our child component from parent, but whatever things or whatever functionality we are doing in our child component, that will not be affected even we are re-rendering it. So let's see that how. So we have a clock. So basically definitely clock is changing time every second. It's returning a time here. So we are getting time as props and times is being updated, and in input we will be writing something. Okay, let's do that. So if I write something here, dbk, awesome. So you can see this component is being re-rendered every second, but still whatever I am writing in my input is not changed. This works because during last step React only update the context in h1 with new time. It sees that the input appears in the JSX in the same place as last time, so React does not touch the input value. Awesome. So basically React will compare, oh, only this part is changing, this part is not changing, so it will update this part. Epilogue browser paint. After rendering is done, React update the DOM. The browser will repaint the screen. Although the process is known as browser rendering, we will refer painting to avoid confusion. Now, so first and foremost step is rendering. First is trigger of a render. Okay, so it could be an initial render or updating of a state. If it's an initial render, then create root is something which is being called. If it's an update of the state, then that particular component is being called. Now the trigger is being done, then rendering will happen. What rendering will do, React will compare whatever the changes has been done in the component and make a record of it. Then update of the DOM will happen. So basically what happens now, this record keeping is actually the virtual DOM. Update or commit will happen. What it will do, it will match up the value, and whatever the value is changed, only that part is being changed, nothing else will be affected. And then at last browser will repaint your UI and you will see your updated UI based on the changes you have asked. Recap: any screen update in a React app happens in three: trigger, render, and commit. You can use strict mode to find mistakes in your component. Highly recommended. Use strict mode always. It if you are a learner or if you are advanced anything, it really makes your job more easier, helps you avoid confusing bugs. React does not touch the DOM if rendering result is same as last. So basically, if it will not change the DOM if there is no change in virtual DOM.